let's move on to the next question. And the next question is, the man accused the minister of dash, comma, claiming that he had deliberately avoided telling the public how dash the error really was. The options for blank number 1 are verisimilitude, veracity and equivocating. The options for blank number 2 are egregious, venial and minuscule. Now that we have read the question and the options, let's analyze the question. The question is divided into 2 parts and it is divided by a comma. The first part talks about the minister who was accused or held responsible for something wrong by the man. Here, the word accused acts as a clue. That means the blank has to be filled by a word with a negative connotation. As there is no contrasting word in the latter or second part of the question but a comma, so the idea is furthered. The second part states that he claimed that the minister had deliberately avoided telling the public how dash the error really was. The word claim means to say that something is true or is a fact without having any proof. The words claim, deliberately avoided and error are indicative that the blank has to be filled by a word with a negative connotation. Now, let's come up intuitively with a word for both the blanks. For the first blank, as we have the word accused, so it is to be filled with a word like wrongdoing or offense, something that is not morally right. In this question, the 2 ideas or parts are interconnected. So the phrase deliberately avoided also acts as a clue, indicating that the concealing or hiding of something is there. Now, looking at the second blank, we need a word for describing how the error really was. Naturally enough, it has to be wrong or bad or big enough or glaring. So it should also be a negative word. Now, let's move on to the option words and find out the answers. The first option for the first blank is verisimilitude. The word verisimilitude is a noun and it means being believable or having the appearance of being true. Basically, it means the quality of appearing realistic or true. The second word for the first blank is veracity. The word veracity is also a noun, which means the quality of being true, honest or accurate, or the habit of telling the truth. Now, let's move on to the third option for the first blank, which is equivocating. The word equivocating is also a verb and it means to use ambiguous language so as to conceal or hide the truth or avoid committing oneself. So it means prevaricating, be evasive, be non-committal or be vague or be ambiguous. Now let's move on to the first option word of the second blank and the word is egregious. The word egregious is an adjective which means outstandingly or conspicuously bad or shocking or extremely bad in a way that is very noticeable, as for example, egregious error or egregious abuses. So it means shocking, appalling, horrific or horrifying. Now let's move on to the second option for the second blank and the word is venial. The word venial is also an adjective and it is used to describe a sin, a fault or a mistake that is not very serious and can be forgiven. If a wrong action is venial, it is not serious and therefore easy to forgive. The common collocations are a venial sin, a venial error. Now let's move to the third option for the second blank and the word is minuscule. The word minuscule is also an adjective which means something that is extremely small. If you describe something as minuscule, you mean that it is very, very small. As for instance, the film was shot in 17 days, a minuscule amount of time. So now the 3 options for the first blank are verisimilitude, which means having the appearance or semblance of truth. The second option is veracity, which means truthful, honest or correct version of something. And the third option is equivocating, which means speaking intentionally in an unclear and confusing way to hide the truth, out of which the word equivocating matches with the prediction for the first blank. So the answer for the first blank would be equivocating. Now, similarly, move on to the 3 options for the blank number 2. The first option is egregious, which means outstandingly or shockingly or extremely bad. The second option is venial, which means a sin or a fault or a mistake that is not very serious and can be forgiven. And the last option is minuscule, which means extremely small. So out of all the 3 options, egregious matches with our prediction for the second blank. So our answers are equivocating and egregious.